Joel Brown, Mineral Tracker.
Outstanding. The levels look good. Thank you for joining us today. Mineral tracking sounds like an app that you download, which it is. And it sounds like it does, all this work for you and everything like that. So first of all, let's set the table with what Mineral Tracker is, because I think some people might have an idea in their head. And since we've started talking, I've really come to realize that a lot of people who don't even have minerals could benefit from having this app and doing some tracking and that sort of thing. So describe the app and kind of what your company does.
Yeah, absolutely. Good question, Jason. So you've hit the nail on the head, really. What Mineral Tracker is it's an online app. So there, even at this point in time, there isn't any downloading that needs to be done. You can get to it from any internet browser, including one on your phone or your iPad. And what it really is it's a tool that we've designed for mineral owners, and not just for mineral owners. If you have any interest in what's going on in oil and gas in North Dakota, Mineral Tracker can be a useful app for you. It includes features like an interactive map that includes all of the horizontal well bores, all the surface locations, where the rigs are currently at, where permits are at. And so even if you don't have mineral interest, the app, we think, or the map itself is useful to people. But beyond that, beyond just the interactive map, a lot of Mineral Tracker is really focused on this idea of what is my revenue? How much money am I making off the mineral rights that I own? So in order to sign up for it, it's a really simple sign up. Most of our users can sign up in less than 10 minutes. The only information that's necessary to populate a Mineral Tracker profile that would be specific to your interest, to your wells, is just going in and picking from a nice, easy to use drop down list the wells that you have an interest in, and then entering your percentage, what percent of that well you're being paid for. And then from there, Mineral Tracker pulls from multiple different databases and online sources to begin to put together this picture of what does my revenue look like in the past, going as far back as the year 2000. And then what does it look like going into the future? Because we're a company founded by petroleum engineers with a lot of experience in this industry, one of the unique things that we're able to do is project how much oil and gas is going to come out of each one of these wells in North Dakota for the 30 to 40 years that they're going to be producing. And so we give access to that information to our clients so that they can begin to plan for their financial future as well.
Go ahead.
No, that was a mouthful for sure. But in a nutshell, we designed Mineral Tracker as an easy-to-use analysis tool that is useful to me as a petroleum engineer, but it's easy enough to use and easy enough to understand that someone living out of state that has never seen an oil and gas well in North Dakota could wrap their mind around it really easily.
Well, I was going to ask you, Joel Brown, with this Mineral Tracker, Watford City, you guys are located in, correct?
That's right in the heart of the Bakken.
Right in the heart of the Bakken. So I'm going to get a boots on the ground update at the end of the interview. But mineraltracker.com, you guys have been around for how long now?
We've launched Mineral Tracker in September of 2018 to the public. We'd had some beta testing before that and about a year of development leading up to that point in time, but we have been commercially operating now for almost a year. So a big milestone coming up for us here pretty soon.
Coming up on your 1 year anniversary, your 1 year birthday, if you will, or business-versary, I think is what actually the marketing term behind it these days. Because we all got to be fifth graders, even when we're adults, we still got to be fifth graders. Anyways, there's a lot of truth behind that. So the reason I bring it up is you guys have had a year now of collecting data. You've had some time before then where you got some historicals, et cetera, et cetera. But do you guys know yet who the averages are? What's the average age? What's the average income for someone in North Dakota or the Bakken that gets minerals? Have you guys been able to really kind of get that information yet?
Yeah, it's been really eye-opening in delving into this business that's so unique. It's not what I anticipated. I think it's the picture of who a mineral owner is not quite what most people think of. I think most people think of mineral owners as the farmer, the rancher, and they're just raking in millions and millions of dollars based on their royalties. But the reality is that because of how mineral rights work, most of the time they're divided up a lot more. It's not just the farmer, the rancher who owns the surface that owns the minerals. It's divided among many members of his family going potentially generations in the past. And what this results in is we've actually discovered that the average mineral owner in the state of North Dakota is a 65-year-old woman collecting $600 or less on her minerals. So quite a disparity from what I think the typical picture of a mineral owner looks like.
Without a doubt, I think you're right. A lot of people had pictures of farmers making money with brand new combines and new, wheat field or barns or things like that. But it's not. It's not. I mean, when you said that, I knew exactly the person in my mind that you were talking about, because that was the last person I actually had a discussion about mineral rights. She's 67 years old and she makes $690 a month.
Yep, there you go. She's the exact demographic.
Now she shares that with about 8 other family members. How common is that, where these royalty checks are shared amongst family members? Do you guys extrapolate down to that?
Yeah, that's a really common thing that we've seen, and that's a big reason for why we think Mineral Tracker is so important. Because even to keep in mind that these things are divided up among family members, and so it's likely significant to that family, but minerals are really a family matter as well. This is something that not only is going to be here for this generation, it's something that's going to be potentially important to the next generation. $600 getting divided among potentially your 4 kids might be less impactful, but ultimately, there are a lot of mineral owners out here who have built up a lot of knowledge because they've been around to see the leasing, to see the drilling, to see, the production and the pipelines and everything go in. And at some point in time, it's going to be handed down to the next generation that doesn't have that same background. And so we see Mineral Tracker, and we've noticed, especially with the younger generation, that Mineral Tracker becomes a great way to pass knowledge quickly from one generation to the next. It's such a easy way to be able to analyze the full picture and then also drill down into specific details around your mineral asset, that it helps to catch up, the next generation who hasn't had that same background, but to be able to catch them up quickly in a way that makes it less overwhelming for them to manage.
How about when it comes to North Dakota now? We've got, I think it's something like 97, 95, 93% of the land is private. This is maybe outside of your wheelhouse, but have you noticed that North Dakota is very unique across the nation with the amount of private land it has compared to public land or BLM land?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things that I think has really allowed the Bakken to flourish as much as it has in comparison to potentially some other basins in the U.S. I think about the Powder River Basin in Wyoming, where they're similar in ways to the Permian Basin. There are multiple stacked pay zones in the Powder River Basin that have tons of potential, but there's so much BLM land down in the Powder River Basin that really hampers the ability for oil companies to go and explore and develop that acreage, that it's never going to be able to catch up as quickly as the Bakken was able to develop, largely because we have private land, and private land turns into a business deal that isn't hampered nearly as much by environmental concerns and political concerns like BLM land can be. So, yeah, absolutely. I think that is one of the very strong points that we have going for us in North Dakota, is that the vast majority of the land that we hold here is private, and even a large portion of it being owned by the state. The state is significantly easier to work with and develop than BLM land is.
Now, mineraltracker.com is exclusively for the Bakken right now, correct?
That's correct. We like we talked about, we're still a pretty young company, and the Bakken is certainly what we have developed an expertise in. It's the area that we understand, and we're able to rely a lot on our expertise in this to support not only the app, but support our clients in a one-on-one manner. We field a lot of questions. We field a lot of unique scopes of work that wind up needing someone to roll up their sleeves and really dig in to understand what's going on. And so the Bakken is the area where we feel most comfortable right now. And I mean, ultimately, we wanted to test the concept in the Bakken, and we're still growing as a company. We're still building up our staff, but ultimately the thought process being that Mineral Tracker is something that could be fairly easily expanded into other states, other basins, and become something that can be useful for mineral owners across the country. But we did want to start with North Dakota because this is where we're from, this is our home, and we're really dedicated to the mineral owners here.
Now, I'm not familiar with some of the idiosyncrasies when it comes to North Dakota's land purchases and that sort of thing. I've looked in South Dakota, I've looked in some Wyoming land, that sort of thing, and oftentimes 50% of the mineral owners is with a previous owner, and you see that a lot in some of the western states. Does that ever come up in North Dakota? Have you ever heard of that before? Is this really common? Is this kind of a unique thing that is maybe when there's scarce water it comes up? I'm not sure. It always kind of struck me as odd, like, okay, when you buy something, why don't you get it all? But
I think one of the reasons that you see that mineral rights aren't sold very often in North Dakota along with the surface, and largely because we've got a rich history of oil and gas production in North Dakota. The very first well in North Dakota was drilled in 1951. And we had a small boom through the 60s, a slightly larger boom in the late 70s and early 80s. All of them pale in comparison to the boom that began out here in 2008 and really continued to the height in 2014. But I mean, the point being that landowners out here have been aware that there is potential for oil and gas production for such a long time now that minerals have become separated from the surface in many situations. And I think that that's likely the reason that you see that in North Dakota. But for you to come and purchase a farm out here, it's very unlikely that you're going to purchase the minerals along with it. That being said, there has become a very strong marketplace right now for mineral buyers in particular. There are a lot of private equity-backed firms right now who are sending out letters that are contacting folks. They are digging deep into the title to identify who those minerals owners are, and then sending out basically unsolicited offers to purchase their minerals. And you'd be surprised at how often people wind up selling.
I know that when I helped Piper Auction and Realty with they had a auction that was in the Dickinson area, and there were some minerals that came with it. And that's why I helped them out, because it was so rare. And, they wanted some historicals and that sort of thing that go with it. And this was probably 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago. And I was shocked that there was even somebody selling the minerals. But just, 5-6 years ago, it was really rare. And that was during, big times and everything like that. But I could see where it'd come up occasionally. But I also see where, hey, we ain't giving them up, because that's the legacy money, that's the empowerment money for generations to come, that sort of thing. Anyway, so okay, I wanted to ask you about the lifestyle of leasing and that sort of thing when it comes to these minerals. We talked about how there's one way the life cycle can continue. You just will it on to your kids and everything like that. But I'm sure there's other life cycles involved, from the development phase all the way to, getting to the market to when you get your check, that sort of thing. So let's talk about that life cycle that is involved with the minerals.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's something that's so interesting because of the influx of people that we have in Western North Dakota right now. The large portion of them working in the oil field and having some concept of what mineral ownership really is. But not really understanding what it actually looks like. The first thing that's incredibly unique about the United States in general is that we actually have private mineral ownership. We are one of the very few countries in the world that have any private mineral ownership whatsoever. If you look at another one, Canada, about 10% of the minerals in Canada are owned by private entities, and the other 90% is owned by the government. And if you look here in the U.S., we have just such incredible private property rights that the minerals have been owned by private individuals since homesteading. And so if you look at what's taken place in North Dakota, what likely happened is, back in the early 1900s, someone came from out east, they homesteaded out here, they applied for a patent for their homestead acreage. And with that patent, they got the rights to the minerals. And over time, that got passed down, likely with the land, until it was discovered that there was oil and gas in North Dakota. And at that point in time, that's where you begin to see mineral rights beginning to be separated from the surface land. But following that path, if you were here in 2008, being aware that there was potentially some oil and gas development, mostly happening over in the Sydney, Montana area at that point in time. But around that 2005 to 2008, there was a lot of leasing going on in western North Dakota because of the prospect that the Bakken continued not through just the Sydney, Montana area and the partial North Dakota area, but everything in between potentially, which is where Watford falls right now. At that point in time, it was very speculative whether or not anything would ever be productive in what is now considered really the core of the basin. And so what happened at that point in time is, me as a farmer rancher who owned minerals under my property, someone came to me with this offer of a lease. And what a lease is really is the right to develop that oil and gas that sits beneath my feet. In compensation for signing that lease, I get what's called a bonus, which is typically so many $100 or $1,000 per acre that's paid to me up front for signing the lease. And then secondly, as soon as they begin producing oil and gas from my property, I'm going to begin collecting a royalty. Most of the time in North Dakota, that royalty is somewhere between 15 and 22% of my proportionate share of that oil and gas well. And so if upon signing that lease, the last important thing to keep in mind is that that lease is going to expire at some date if they don't drill and complete a well, typically 3 to 5 years. And so within 3 to 5 years, that an oil company is going to come and drill a well, maybe not on my property, it might be 2 miles away from my property, but because of the way that we develop things in the Bakken with 2-mile laterals, it pools 1,280 acres together, all under one well at that point in time. And so once that well begins producing, my lease is said to be held by production, and that lease is going to dictate the royalty that I'm going to get paid off of that well and any future wells drilled in that same spacing unit for the remainder of the life of that well. And so maybe back in 2010, sometime around there, they came out and drilled their first well somewhere in the Watford City area, and I began collecting a royalty check. If you ever look at the production of a Bakken well, very similar to any other unconventional well that you'll notice, it starts off with a very, very, very high peak that drops dramatically in the first few months, in the first couple of years, and then levels off over time. So as a mineral owner, what I noticed was that my first check was really big, and my second check was big, and then it got smaller and smaller and smaller, and now it's gotten to a point where it's probably leveled out. We're kind of in a phase right now in western North Dakota, in McKenzie County in particular, where that one well that was originally drilled to hold the lease, today oil companies are going out and they're drilling out the remainder of that 1,280 acre spacing, what's said to be infilling the acreage. So the one well held the lease, but now they're coming and typically infilling it with potentially another 4 Bakken wells and an additional 5 Three Forks wells to come up with about 10 wells per 1,280 acre spacing unit is what we see is pretty average across the basin right now. So one thing that we've really noticed that's kind of interesting, especially in these unsolicited offers from mineral buyers, is that mineral buyers are targeting areas where they see that maybe that one well is all of a sudden being surrounded by a lot more permits, or there's a rig that's currently drilling the additional 9 to 10 wells in that same spacing unit. unbeknownst potentially to the person that owns those minerals, because they've just been collecting this small check for a number of years. And so they target that area, not necessarily offering the best price that they possibly could for the known production that's going to be coming online soon. But the interesting thing about this transaction is that it really relies on the fact that most mineral owners are far removed now from what's actually going on in North Dakota, because they may not even live here. And so they are ill-informed as to what is really the potential for future revenue. And so it may look like a very good deal to them to sell. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic of how this is unfolded up to this point. We're in a unique phase right now where mineral buyers are really running very hot, sending out tons of letters.
I mentioned Piper Auction and Realty earlier, and as you were talking, I kept thinking about, man, I can imagine how a realtor would love your information. And then I thought back when I was a kid and I would follow batting averages and touchdowns and how many yards Barry Sanders got in a season and so I would imagine all those finance geeks, like I was a sports geek, would love tracking, the mineral district or whatever the minerals percentages and stats and that sort of thing. What kind of trends have you been seeing? Am I off on that, to where the basic information that you're providing really at the end of the day could present some interesting trends?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're beginning to see some interesting trends already, because especially with Mineral Tracker, what we're doing a lot is we're pulling from a lot of different public data sources, some databases that we have created internally. But what we're noticing is that it becomes a really good comparison tool. This is saying this is what the average should look like. This is what the majority of people around you are collecting on their minerals, based on current commodity prices and the deducts that we experience here in North Dakota, looking at production off wells and then your certain percentages of them. And we've certainly noticed that there is some disparity between different regions, different oil companies, where you can begin to see very definite trends in who is potentially a more efficient, either more efficient or has negotiated better deals, and in a way that certainly benefits or less so benefits mineral owners. So yeah, it certainly is an interesting thing to be able to pull all this data together, which I'm probably fall into that category of a finance nerd myself. So I kind of geek out on it quite a bit.
Yeah, I can see where it can be very comparable to stocks, and and like I said, I do with baseball and fantasy sports and all kinds of different things. And I should point out too, trends are different than averages. You mentioned earlier there's a 65-year-old woman making less than $600 a month on minerals. That's actually an average, right? That's like science. That's like math. Trends are more just, okay, this is going to help me predict behavior, predict my behavior, the future decisions, that sort of thing. Okay. Okay, let's get an update from Watford City. You're down in Watford. What's happening down there? Is there still some decent activity in the heart of the Bakken?
It's really interesting, Jason. It seems like if you're following Wall Street Journal, if you're following anything going on in the financial sector, unconventional oil and gas in North Dakota is just getting absolutely beaten up right now by investors and by Wall Street. And if you look here in North Dakota, it's kind of hard to see that somewhat, because the activity does not feel like it's slowed down whatsoever. We're still running in that 60 rigs range in North Dakota, which is where we've been at for about the past 2 years now. And so the pace has felt very steady here in North Dakota. We did just have a very interesting recent shakeup in McKenzie County and Watford City, all through North Dakota and even down into Denver with what's going on with Whiting right now. They wound up laying off, I believe it was close to 33% of their workforce across the entire corporation, and that was certainly felt up here. But if you look at what other oil companies are doing, if you look at what pipelines are being built and gas plants, it still feels very much like we are just par for the course over the past couple of years towards the level of development, the level of activity that we're experiencing.
You have noticed a little bit, though. You mentioned the whiting you're experiencing up there. Yeah, I didn't get like, the sky is falling from you, but I got that there a little bit of the impact has happened, but not as bad as the media's portrayed it.
That's the way that it seems up here at the very least. And the other thing to notice about the media is, and the financial media that's really been beating up on oil and gas in particular, is that it's been very Permian focused for a long time now. And so the Bakken has kind of taken the back seat to the Permian as far as media coverage at the very least. And so the things that are being said in the media, I think, are largely aimed towards Permian operators and Permian production, less so than it is towards the Bakken. If the trends that I see as being, one of the handful of people that is very Bakken focused, and certainly mostly from a reservoir engineering standpoint and then from a financial standpoint, looking at what I've seen in the Bakken, it gives me lots of reasons for optimism, actually. The increases in the size of fracking that we have out here, the high intensity completions that operators are all trending towards now and are implementing successfully, has really led to what I think should be a marker towards a renaissance in the Bakken. What I've seen is that over the past couple of years, I've seen average EUR, that stands for estimated ultimate recovery, meaning how much oil and how much gas is going to be produced from each one of these wells over its entire productive life. I've seen that trend up from what had previously been about 350,000 barrels per well as an average EUR in the Bakken for about the past decade, really. And I see that number closer to 600,000 now. So you're talking about close to an 80% increase in average EUR just experienced over the past couple of years. And the really interesting thing about seeing that is it's not just core production that's proving that. There have been companies out here, Kraken, I think, is probably at the top of the list, along with Bruin, that have been really coming out here and targeting areas that have not been considered core Bakken, and proving that that acreage can be produced and can be tracked in a way that is economic. So what we've seen is not only a trend of average EUR going up, but the area that would be considered core Bakken is continuing to expand out to a point where acreage that had previously been considered fringe today is a very hot spot to own minerals or to own working interest. So it's an interesting thing when you really put your head down into the data and are able to analyze these things. But the media is very focused on what's going on in the Permian, and I all these trends that I see myself, I don't see getting portrayed anywhere else in the news.
You hearing much from the small business owners in Watford City? The trickle down effect, that sort of thing. Are they doing okay? The cafes, the convenience store workers, that sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely. Things
Okay.
are very hot here still. We're at in Watford City, we're at 99% occupancy in our apartments. We have a real crunch for single-family housing, and construction is actually beginning to pick up out here. We've got new restaurants opening up still, so you can tell that there is still very much so a need. We've still got catching up to do to just keep up with the level of activity that we have here in McKenzie County. And we've got a really great community with great community leaders and great business minds that are outside of oil and gas as well here in McKenzie County that are doing some very creative things, not only making this a community that's handling the influx of people, that's handling the level of activity that we have, but we're maintaining Watford as a really desirable place to live. We've got just an absolutely beautiful school system. We've got approval now to construct a new elementary school that's going to be just another tremendous building. And we've got new great restaurants popping up all the time. We've got a new project that's coming online here called Slow Ride that's going to be a kind of like a tequila and tapas bar. Something that growing up in Watford, I never thought we would have had. But I can tell you, as a guy in my late 20s with a young family here, this is a really fun place to live. And it's an exciting place to live.
Tapas at Watford City. Oh, my.
I know it.
I'm thinking of my Uncle Keith, he calls jeans half pants. So I'm just thinking of going, oh my word, I can just see bringing in some ethnic food, where, not eating fish on a Friday. Boy, that's you're getting pretty out there, man. So tapas, holy smokes, in Watford. But that's a good sign, though. And this is the one thing that I do believe this, that there's such a demand for jobs right now, and these jobs, like North Dakota, 20 to 30,000 jobs they talk about that is needed. Well, these jobs need skills. You got to go to school for 9 months. You got to go to school for 2 years for some of these jobs, and unfortunately, sometimes old dogs don't want to learn new tricks. Well, other dogs do want to learn tricks. And I asked Lynn Helms this. I said, if the nice guy from Watford doesn't want to have the job, or the person from Fargo, or the person from Nebraska, or the person from there, I go, that nice man from Ghana, he might just come over and take that job. And Lynn Helms said, that's exactly what's going to happen. I said, well, I know. I mean, North Dakota might become more of a melting pot than I think anybody ever really anticipated, because we have so many jobs available. And one more question for you on the on your moonlighting, your community moonlighting, where you represent the McKenzie County Job Development Authority. Are you guys still giving away some money or doing some grants or some low financing loans for builders, because you have such a demand in Watford City for construction?
The big pilot project that we're running right now that we're very excited about is what's really structured as a grant process to incentivize single-family homes here in Watford City and McKenzie County, rather than just Watford City. But this is applicable in Alexander and Arnie Garden, throughout approved county subdivisions. But what we're doing is we are trying to find a way to bridge that gap, because we have such a high percentage of our population in Willis and Watford City living in apartment buildings. And what we notice is that, these are people that have high-paying jobs typically. They're young. A lot of them have young families living in apartment buildings, which isn't ideal for most people. A lot of people, when they're at this point in their life where they've got a young family, they've got a high-paying job, they want to put down some permanent roots, and they want to have a house with a yard where they can feel like an established member of this community. And we want to facilitate that too. We want to make sure that people who want to work here and continue to grow our economy and the industry that, has been so good to us here, that they have a place to be here, and not only that they can live here, but that they can enjoy it and they can become a permanent member of this community. So that's something that we're working on as the Job Development Authority right now. That's a very new project as well. Is just kicked off in June of this year, and so we're just taking applications. We've still got a lot more. We've got the capacity for more applications. We would definitely encourage people that if this is something that they're interested in, they can find out more information at the McKenzie County website on what it would take to qualify for this. But it's not. There's not a part of it that is limited based on income, which makes it really useful here. Whereas a lot of other housing programs we've noticed that are limited on income don't apply to McKenzie County because we've got such a high level of income in comparison to a lot of the rest of the state.
Joel Brown of mineraltracker.com. As I mentioned, he moonlights in the community like a lot of leaders do. As what role do you have at the Job Development Authority in McKenzie County?
I'm the president right now.
I thought you were the president. Okay, so we got the president on here, folks. The president of Mineral Tracker, and are you the president of Mineral Tracker, or just a founding partner?
President of Mineral Tracker.
All right, well there you go. It's easy to remember then, president of both of those different things.
That's why I had to do it.
We better circle back to Mineral Tracker and kind of bookend, I guess. Remind people that the interview is about tracking minerals and how those people who have minerals, you can certainly sign up, and for those people who don't have minerals, you can certainly sign up. It's an app, and is it free? Are there costs involved? Just kind of give us a summary, and everybody wants to know the brass tacks on things, so you might as well get that out of the way too.
Right. Well, we've got two levels of subscription services with Mineral Tracker right now. The first one that we launched is the Pro package. That comes with projections. It comes with access to our team here, a couple of other features that aren't included in the free version, but we do also have a free version of the app. Once we identified that there was such a large percentage of mineral owners in North Dakota that were collecting $600 a month or less on their minerals, but these people still have questions, and $600 a month, it might not be enough to go buy a yacht, but it's still it's an important part of your income. And so we wanted to create something where they were able to go and benefit from it as well. And so there's a basic subscription to Mineral Tracker that is absolutely free. I would encourage anyone who has minerals or is just interested in learning more about oil and gas in North Dakota to go sign up. There's no cost, no obligation whatsoever for the basic version, and I think it can be a really good tool for people. One last thing I'd like to add, Jason, just on Mineral Tracker, and really what it is that we've done here in Watford City to support Western North Dakota, is that Mineral Tracker is a great tool. But the most important thing is that it's backed up by real people who have a lot of experience and a lot of expertise in this industry. And so if Mineral Tracker isn't the right solution or doesn't provide the right answer to a question that someone has, it's backed up by real people who can help them understand it. One of the things I've mentioned a couple of times during this interview that we're seeing a huge trend in mineral buyers, and the reason that we see so many mineral buyers so active out here is because people are actually selling their minerals on a daily basis in North Dakota. One big push that we really want right now is that if anyone is considering selling their minerals, because for whatever reason, a lot of people want to retire, they want to pay for their kids' school, they want to go buy a house or go buy a boat. There's a reason that they are thinking about cashing out right now rather than just holding it for the long haul. There are good reasons to sell your minerals, but the most important thing that you can do if you're going to decide to sell your minerals is to make sure that you're getting a fair price for them. And so one of the things that we do as the experts backing up Mineral Tracker is we'll run evaluation on people's mineral rights to help them to understand what their minerals are actually worth and if the offers that they're getting are fair. And beyond that, we can go and act as a broker to be able to help get them a better price through a competitive bidding process. So we're trying to push right now to make sure that people understand that that's an option for them, that they're not alone in making these decisions by themselves, because they're really important decisions, but there's an option out there to enlist some people that have done a lot of this and really want the best for them.
All right, one last thing here, and I wanted to just mention, I pulled up the address here because by the way, folks, a little behind the scenes here. Before we got on the interview, we were talking a little bit, and see, if I had a big budget, I'd get some sort of dramatic music going here. But so Padlock Safety Systems, 201 Main Street South, Watford City, USA, North Dakota. They design, what's the best way to describe it? It's like a pumping unit, so that contractors and employees can go into a pump jack gated area more safely, and it makes life much easier and that sort of thing. And as I mentioned, he's a roughneck inventor turned president. But anyway, 201 Main Street. Your assignment over the next couple of weeks is to go down there and introduce yourself. He's you being the big community leader you are yourself. He's out of Gillette and then also out of Watford City, so he opened up a shop in Watford. So. He can be the nice welcome wagon and shake his hand and see what's going on. And like I said, man, he's a character. You're gonna enjoy it very much. So his name's Pat Young with Padlock Safety Systems. Pat Young is his name. But okay, just wanted to.
I got to do it now.
Yeah, well, and you know what? There's going to be people listening to the next interview to find out. So I am gonna. That's right. I'm gonna see. We could turn this into a soap opera. Part of this interview. Now we're talking. Okay.
I like it.
So the days of our Bakken. That's right. Okay. Go ahead. We better give out your information for listeners. So if people want to give you a call or go to the website or just that type of stuff. So go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest way to reach out to us is to go to mineraltracker.com. We've got a lot more information there. We've got a really easy way to get a hold of us. Our physical address here in Watford City is 500 2nd Avenue Southwest. We're in the old Cornerstone Bank building. My grandfather was actually on the president of the McKenzie County bank when they broke ground on this building. So I get to continue to live within his legacy and work now in the office that he helped to build. I'm
Really?
gonna. Oh yeah, it's Watford's a small town. There's a lot of history here.
Yeah, it used to be a small town, but the way you guys have been growing, it's got its own new culture, really. I mean, that by the way, that's a discussion for another day, because you're right, it is a small town and it's got its roots embedded in, but you can't grow that fast without having new culture.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, you're right.
you got tapas coming to Watford City. I
It
love
very
it.
much so feels like a melting pot. No, it's still. What I love about Watford is I think even though we have grown nearly 8 times in size over the past 10 years. So if you think about it, nearly 1 in every 10 people out here wasn't here 10 years ago. It's pretty incredible to think about, but we've really maintained a very tight-knit community, and the people that have come in have just been such a pleasure to have here, and it's just such a welcoming community. So I think that comes from a lot of the leadership, but I think it's the people that are drawn here and that stay here. I think they're really high-quality people, and it makes it very much a pleasure to live here in Watford City.
One thing to point out too is, Watford City is primarily an oil and gas town right now, isn't it? I mean, that's what the bulk of the boom has been energy development. Unless you guys have got a boom sunflower crop out there I don't know about. But for the most part, yeah. I mean, I know you got some ag and ranching and everything, but for the most part, it's the boom has come from energy development. And when you think about some of the things that oil and gas companies have done, is generally when they go into a community, they create opportunity. They create opportunity for the community. They create opportunity for people to have very good paying jobs. Now, you work hard, and generally that means you got a good work ethic if you work hard. But what that also does is that means that both parents don't have to work if they don't need to. Maybe one only has to do a part-time job or something like that. But generally, if you work hard in the energy industry, the energy industry does pay you pretty well so you can support a family. I mean, do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's unique. It does create just a very unique opportunity for people. And if you look at what we have going on here in McKenzie County, our number one demographic here is young families. If you look at a breakdown of the age brackets that we have, the highest age or the highest percentage age bracket that we have are people in their 20s, and the second highest are children under 9. So it's a really unique demographic that we have here, which is completely the opposite of what it was when I was growing up here. When if you lived in your 20s, you really didn't have much of an opportunity to even stay in Western North Dakota. Today, it's very much so the opposite. It's a very young, thriving community that we have here, and very diverse.
I don't know. When I was in college, the state of North Dakota was actually paying people to come back and live in North Dakota. I don't know. You're 28, so I'm about at least a decade. Well, I mean, I can't help it if I have such a young clique. Everybody, a young posse that I hang out with. I can't, I got to disclose my age here. But no, when I was in college, so 20 years ago, they were actually paying people to come back to North Dakota. I mean, think about the paradigm shift from that is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, man. Well, mineraltracker.com. I'd like to thank you once again. Normally we end with, you giving your information, but we kind of went extended into overtime here. So we better just one more time, give us that website.
Absolutely. So it's mineraltracker.com. You can email us at info@mineraltracker.com. Our toll-free number is 833-842-2924. I'll say that one more time. It's 833-842-2924.